The warship groaned like an old beast, its metal ribs creaking under the weight of damage and time. Smoke curled lazily in the air, weaving through the shattered beams of neon light that flickered like dying stars. Jace Morin sat cross-legged on the maintenance deck, his armor cracked and smudged with black scorch marks. His helmet lay next to him, dented in a way that suggested it had taken a hit meant to flatten his skull. He poked at the exposed circuits of a repair panel with a spanner that looked suspiciously like it wanted to explode in his hand. Across the deck, perched on a crate with the kind of grace that made him feel like a broken toy soldier, sat the alien warrior. Lysera. She was watching him with an expression halfway between curiosity and amused disdain. Her armor, though scarred and pitted from the same battle, gleamed faintly as though it refused to be anything less than majestic. Even damaged, it looked like it had been forged out of moonlight and anger. Her long ears twitched slightly, betraying whatever unspoken thoughts were running behind those sharp, silver-flecked eyes. "You humans," she said, her voice smooth as polished steel, "fight like you have no concept of how fragile you are. It's entertaining, like watching a glass vase try to punch a cannon." Jace grunted, not looking up from the mess of wires he was pretending to understand. "Yeah, well, we prefer to call it courage. And for the record, I've seen glass vases do some impressive damage when thrown hard enough." She tilted her head, the faintest smirk forming on her lips. "So which are you, courageous or just reckless?" "I'm leaning towards recklessly courageous," he muttered, the spanner slipping from his fingers and clattering to the floor. He cursed under his breath and picked it up, glancing up to find her staring at him with that unnerving, warrior's calm. Then she said it, casual but deliberate, like she was testing him. "Are you curious about what's under this armor?" The words hung in the air like an electric charge. He blinked, the corner of his mouth quirking. "Not really," he said. "I'm more curious about what's under all that attitude." For a split second she froze. Her smirk faltered, as if no one had ever bothered to answer her teasing with something so disarmingly honest. Her fingers, halfway through adjusting the clasp on her shoulder plate, stilled. Her expression flickered confusion, surprise, maybe a hint of intrigue, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Jace leaned back against the bulkhead, arms crossed over his battered chest plate. "I mean, sure, your armor's probably top-tier alien tech, but that's just metal. I want to know what you're like when you're not being the scariest person in the room." "You assume I am always the scariest person in the room," she replied, but there was a sharp edge missing from her tone now. "Am I wrong?" He shot back, raising an eyebrow. "You've got that whole deadly goddess from another galaxy vibe. I bet the ship's AI runs extra diagnostics just to avoid making you mad." The AI's voice crackled overhead, monotone and dry. "Affirmative. I am programmed to fear her more than hull breaches." Jace burst out laughing, and even Lysera's lips curved into a reluctant smile. "See," he said, gesturing at the ceiling. "Even your own ship is scared of you. I'm just saying that's a lot to carry around. Doesn't it get heavy?" She considered him in silence for a moment, her long ears twitching faintly again, as though they picked up thoughts like radar. "You speak like someone who has lost battles," she said finally. "Not just with enemies but with yourself." "Yeah, well," Jace shrugged. "You try growing up in a town where the most exciting thing is a bar fight over who makes the best synthetic beer. Life gets creative." Her laugh was quiet, like she hadn't planned to let it slip. He noticed how it softened her features, took some of the sharpness out of her face. She looked less like a warrior forged for battle and more like someone who, if given half a chance, might enjoy sitting under real stars instead of watching them from behind a blast shield. "Maybe I should test you," she said suddenly, a glimmer of mischief lighting her eyes. "If you are not curious about what's under the armor, perhaps I should make you." "Lady, I'm just trying to keep this ship from falling apart," he said, gesturing to the sparking wires in front of him. "If I get distracted, we'll both be seeing what's under the hull. Spoiler, it's vacuum, not as interesting as you'd think." Her smirk returned, sharper this time, but there was warmth behind it. You have spirit, human. I thought all your kind relied on machines to speak for you. We do, he replied, holding up the spanner like a sword. Behold the mighty weapon of the future, fixes ships, opens beer cans, doubles as a blunt object. She shook her head, an incredulous laugh escaping her. The sound was foreign and beautiful, like glass wind chimes in a storm. For reasons he couldn't explain, it made him grin like an idiot. The repair panel sparked again, sending a crackle of static across the room. Jace yelped and shook his hand. Okay, that's the third time I've been electrocuted in the past 10 minutes. Is this ship trying to kill me? Yes, the AI deadpanned, but only with your permission. Lysera chuckled, watching him rub his hand. Perhaps the ship knows something I don't. Perhaps it senses weakness. Or maybe, Jace said, pointing a finger at her, it's jealous of all the attention I'm giving you instead of its wires. She arched an eyebrow, clearly amused by his persistence. You are an unusual creature, Jace Morin. Yeah, he said, grinning. But you're smiling now. Guess I'm doing something right. For a moment, the hum of the ship was the only sound between them. She looked at him, her gaze unreadable but softened, like she was seeing him for the first time, not as a soldier, but as someone who wasn't afraid to look past the armor, literal or otherwise. She didn't respond and he didn't push. Instead, he picked up his spanner, muttering, "Right. Let's see if I can fix this mess without setting myself on fire." Her voice was quieter when she spoke next, almost thoughtful. You might be the strangest human I've met. He grinned without looking up. And yet I'm still your favorite. She didn't deny it. The ship's repair bay had become their universe, one half-ruined, half-luminous cathedral of sparks, hissing vents, and the soft hum of power cores trying to hold the vessel together. Jace sat on the grated floor with his legs sprawled out, the tool belt hanging off his waist like an afterthought. He wasn't sure which was worse. The alien technology that seemed designed by someone with a grudge against logic, or the way Lysera was watching him like a hawk waiting for him to screw up. You know, he said, squinting at a tangled cluster of glowing conduits, human ships are way simpler. We have things like labels, and manuals, and systems that don't explode if you sneeze near them. Perhaps your ships are simpler, Lysera replied, her tone calm but amused. She was perched on the edge of a broken console, her long legs crossed and her hands resting casually on her knees. But they also tend to fall apart faster. I've seen your shuttles. They are tin cans with engines strapped on. Hey, Jace said, pointing the spanner at her. Those tin cans got me to this floating death trap. Don't knock the engineering, it's all about character. We build ships like we build people, flawed, but stubborn enough to survive. Her long ears twitched, the subtle movement he was beginning to recognize as amusement. Flawed, she echoed, smirking slightly. A strange word to use with pride. Trust me, being perfect is overrated, he said. Besides, your ship is exactly a glowing example of perfection right now. He gestured toward the far end of the bay, where a chunk of hull plating lay warped like crumpled foil. Looks like someone got a little overconfident in battle. I didn't see you volunteering to take the brunt of a plasma barrage, she shot back, narrowing her eyes playfully. I would have, he said, but I was busy trying not to explode. That earned him a laugh, low and melodic. It caught him off guard, the way it softened the whole room. He hadn't realized how tense the silence between battles could feel until she broke it with something as simple as laughter. She leaned forward slightly, tilting her head. Do all human soldiers rely on humor to hide their fear? Only the smart ones, he said with a grin. Fear's like mold. Gotta keep it in check or it takes over. You compare fear to mold? She asked, her expression caught somewhere between disbelief and amusement. Yeah, well, I didn't say all our metaphors were good, he said, but it works. She shook her head, her hair catching the light as she watched him struggle with a stubborn bolt. Your hands are clumsy, she said after a beat. You're treating that circuit like it's going to bite you. It did bite me, he muttered, flexing his fingers. I've been electrocuted so many times today I'm starting to think the ship's developing a personality, a mean one. It already has a personality, the ship's AI chimed in suddenly, its voice perfectly dry. And I dislike you. See, Jay said, pointing at the sailing. Mean. Lysera laughed again, this time covering her mouth with the back of her hand, as though the sound surprised her. You argue with machines. Does that ever work? Sometimes, Jace said, mostly when I bribe them with fresh power cells. You cannot bribe me, the AI replied. I have no concept of greed. Yeah, Jace muttered, but you sound like you've got a concept of sarcasm. Lysera tilted her head, observing the banter with a kind of detached curiosity. It is strange, she said softly. You talk to everything around you, even things that do not speak back. Does it make you less lonely? Maybe, Jace admitted after a pause. Or maybe I'm just trying to remind myself I'm alive. Hard to feel alone when you've got a ship insulting you every 5 minutes. You are a peculiar creature, she said, but her tone had softened, the humor giving way to something more thoughtful. She shifted slightly, the dim light reflecting off her armor, highlighting the faint scratches that marred its surface. It wasn't just battle damage, it was history, written in metal. Jace caught himself staring and quickly looked away, focusing on a bundle of wires. So, he said, trying to sound casual, do all Clith warriors wear armor like that, or is yours special? Her gaze lingered on him for a moment before she answered. This armor was forged for me. It carries the crest of my bloodline. It is not just protection, it is a declaration. Of what? He asked. That I am Lysera, blood daughter of the 7th house, she said, her voice steady, yet there was a faint weight behind the words. It tells the universe that I belong to a lineage of warriors, that I carry their victories and their oaths. Sounds heavy, he said quietly. It is meant to be, she replied. Then, with a sudden flash of mischief, she added, which is why I am surprised you don't seem to care what's under it. He looked up smirking. Oh, I care. Just not in the way you think. Her ears twitched again, and though she kept her composure, something in her gaze flickered, something he couldn't quite read. Before the silence could stretch too long, a loud thunk echoed across the bay as one of the panels he'd been working on popped open unexpectedly, sending a small shower of sparks in his direction. Jace jumped back with a curse. Okay, that was uncalled for. Lysera raised an eyebrow. Your ship parts are rebelling. Yeah, well, can't blame them. I'm new here. She laughed once more, low and quiet, and he found himself grinning like an idiot again. It wasn't just her laugh. It was the fact that she was letting herself laugh. Fine, he said, setting his tools aside. Truce with the angry circuits. What do you say we take 5? You can tell me more about your blood 7th house whatever, and I'll tell you about the time I accidentally set my commander's tent on fire. Her lips curved into a smile and she nodded. I think I would like that. Jace had never thought sitting on a busted warship with an alien warrior would feel almost normal. The two of them had claimed a quiet corner of the bay, surrounded by half-repaired panels and a mess of tools that looked more like torture devices than engineering equipment. He sat cross-legged, fiddling with a glowing module the size of his hand, while Lysera leaned back against the wall, her armor plates loosened and stacked nearby, revealing the softer undersuit beneath. He tried not to notice how the fabric clung to her like it had been stitched by smug fashion designers from another galaxy. So, Jace began, twisting the module in his hand like a stressed toy. This blood daughter thing. Is that like being a space princess or something? Should I be calling you your shiny ear majesty? Lysera raised an eyebrow, her long ears flicking slightly as though she was debating whether to laugh or throw a wrench at his head. It is not a title meant for flattery. It means I am born of a line sworn to defend our worlds. We are raised for battle, for honor, and for sacrifice. There is no crown, no throne, only duty. Sounds exhausting, Jace said, setting the module down. I get winded just carrying my backpack upstairs. Couldn't your people just, I don't know, invent Netflix and chill for a change? Her brow furrowed. What is Netflix? He grinned. Oh, it's just a human tradition. You sit around, do nothing, and watch bad movies about space battles. Ironically, all of them are less terrifying than the real thing. She gave him a look like he'd just confessed to a crime. You make entertainment from fake wars. Yeah, he said with a shrug. Cheaper than real ones. Plus, no one loses limbs. He glanced at her arm, where a faint scar peeked out from under the black fabric of her undersuit. Speaking of which, that one from the battle. Lysera looked down at the scar briefly, then nodded. Plasma strike. The armor stopped most of it, but the energy burns through flesh like it is paper. I've had worse. Yeah, I can tell, Jace said. That scar looks like it could tell its own war story, maybe even get its own spin-off series. She blinked at him. A spin-off. Don't worry about it, he said quickly, waving a hand. Human thing. A quiet hum filled the bay as the ship's AI interrupted. You are falling behind schedule on repairs, human. Jace groaned. You know, for a piece of code, you have a real talent for nagging. I am not nagging. I am making an observation about your inefficiency. Lysera smirked. It seems the ship has decided you are its favorite target. Lucky me, Jace muttered, grabbing his spanner. Let's get this panel fixed before your AI decides I'm expendable. He crawled under the half-repaired console, muttering to himself as sparks rained down. Lysera crouched nearby, watching with the kind of silent curiosity that made him feel both clumsy and weirdly important. You know, Jace said from under the panel, I never thought I'd end up here. Fighting side by side with an alien warrior who looks like she stepped out of a sci-fi movie. Do you think all aliens look like me? Lysera asked, amused. Well, no, he admitted. But I'll tell you, I've met a few of your allies. Some of them look like angry jellyfish. I'm not complaining, but it's nice to have someone around who doesn't look like they'd sting me if I blink wrong. I could still sting you, she said, leaning down with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Just not the way you think. Jace hit his head on the console and cursed, which only made her laugh harder. Yeah, thanks for that mental image, he muttered. Great for my concentration. She grinned. Perhaps your concentration is too fragile. Maybe, he said, rubbing his head, but my sense of humor is bulletproof. Try me. For a while, they worked in companionable silence, Jace occasionally grumbling when a wire refused to cooperate and Lysera quietly amused by his persistence. Every now and then, she'd reach over to tighten something with her gloved fingers, moving with the fluid precision of someone who'd been trained since birth to handle things under pressure. He couldn't help but watch her, not because of her alien grace, but because she made everything seem easier than it had any right to be. So, Jace said suddenly, what happens when this war is over? Do you just retire? Hang up the armor, take up knitting? She tilted her head at him. Knitting. It's a human thing, he said. You make clothes with needles and thread. I think you'd be terrifying at it. Probably knit something so sharp it'd double as a weapon. Lysera chuckled softly. If this war ends, I will likely serve the next. That is the way of my house. Yeah, but what if you did? He asked, his tone softer now. What if you just didn't wear the armor anymore? What would you do then? She looked at him for a long moment, as though the question had never occurred to her. I do not know, she admitted. No one has ever asked me that. Well, Jace said, I'm asking. Before she could answer, the repair panel emitted a loud beep and the entire bay lit up briefly as the power grid reconnected. Jace sat back, a little dazed. Fixed it, and I didn't even blow anything up. Temporary success, the AI corrected him. I predict a 42% chance of catastrophic failure within 2 hours due to your substandard technique. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Jace muttered. Next time I'll let you fix it. You argue too much, Lysera said, but there was a teasing note in her voice now. Yeah, but you'd miss it if I stopped, he shot back, flashing a grin. You're smiling again, that's twice in one day. Careful, or people will start thinking you like me. She rolled her eyes, but the smile stayed. Jace leaned against the wall of the repair bay, his back pressed to the cool metal. The ship's hum had shifted to a steadier rhythm now that most of the systems were functional again. He tossed a small bolt into the air, catching it with lazy precision. Lysera sat on the deck across from him, legs folded beneath her like a statue carved from living steel, her armor plates arranged in a neat circle around her. Without them, she looked different, still dangerous, but more human in a way he couldn't quite explain. "You know," Jace said, flipping the bolt again, "if I had armor like that, I'd never take it off. Not because of the battles, just because of how cool I'd look. People would call me the shiny guy, and I'd own it." Lysera's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "You would last 5 minutes in this armor before collapsing under its weight." "What? 5 minutes?" Jace grinned. "That's 5 more than I usually last during my morning training. I'd call that progress." She shook her head, but there was laughter in her eyes. Do humans always mask their weakness with humor? "Of course," he said, catching the bolt one last time. "If we didn't, we'd probably cry too much. And crying in armor is a terrible idea. Rust, fogged-up visors, emotional embarrassment." Lysera chuckled softly, though she quickly masked it by turning her attention to a cracked gauntlet. She began repairing it with a set of alien tools that hummed faintly, reshaping the metal like clay under her touch. Jace watched for a moment, fascinated by the technology. "Okay, I have to ask," he said, leaning forward. "What is that tool? Because it looks like a hairdryer had a baby with a laser gun." She glanced at the device in her hand. "This is a molecular realigner. It rebuilds the armor's structure at a microscopic level." "Yeah," Jace said, "but does it make toast? Because I think that's the future we really need." Lysera gave him a blank look that somehow made him laugh harder. "You are impossible," she said. "Yeah," he admitted. "But admit it, you'd miss me if I stopped talking." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she worked in silence, the glow of the realigner reflecting off her face. When she finally spoke, her tone was quieter. "Perhaps I would." Jace felt something shift between them, something unspoken and fragile. He tried to lighten it with a grin. "Wow, that's the closest thing to a compliment I've gotten all week. Should I mark this day on a calendar?" "You could," she said, "though I would be curious to see how humans celebrate such events. We throw cake at each other and argue over who gets the biggest slice," he said without missing a beat. Lysera tilted her head, clearly unsure if he was joking. "Your culture is strange." "Hey, we're survivors," he said. "We find joy in small things, even if it's cake-based warfare." Before she could respond, the ship's AI chimed in. "Warning, outer hull integrity at 78%. Continuing repairs recommended." "See," Jace said, pointing upward. "Even the ship thinks we're slacking. I'm telling you that AI hates me." "I think it simply does not understand you," Lysera replied. "Much like I didn't at first." He blinked at her. "Wait, so you understand me now?" "Not entirely," she admitted, her lips curving slightly. "But I see why you fight the way you do. You are open. It is disarming." "Disarming?" He grinned. "That's the nicest way anyone's ever told me I'm annoying." She set down her gauntlet, fixing her gaze on him. "You are not annoying, Jace Morin. You are different. My people do not speak like you. They do not laugh during battle or question why we wear armor. They simply follow orders. It is what is expected." "Yeah, well," Jace said softly, "I'm terrible at doing what's expected." She tilted her head. "Perhaps that is why I find you interesting." There was a silence then, filled only by the hum of the ship and the distant crackle of energy fields being recalibrated. Jace felt his chest tighten, not in fear but in the strange realization that he wanted to know everything about this warrior, who seemed both indestructible and fragile in ways she couldn't admit. He broke the silence with a crooked smile. "You know, if you wanted to test me, you could let me try on one of those armor plates. See if I can survive 5 minutes." Lysera raised an eyebrow. "You would drown in it." "Is that a challenge?" he asked. "It is a statement of fact," she replied, but there was a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "Guess I'll just have to prove you wrong," he said, standing and grabbing one of her shoulder plates. It was heavier than he expected. He almost dropped it. "Okay, wow, this weighs as much as my entire training gear." She laughed openly now, the sound warm and unexpected. "I warned you." Yeah, he said, setting the plate down with exaggerated care. "Fine, you win, but don't tell anyone I said that. My reputation as an overconfident idiot depends on it." She smiled in that quiet way of hers, the kind that didn't need words. For the first time, Jace wondered what she looked like without the weight of war and titles pressing on her. He didn't just want to know what was under her armor. He wanted to know who she really was when the universe wasn't watching. "Jace," she said after a moment, her voice softer, "why did you answer me like that? When I asked if you were curious." He looked at her, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. "Because I've seen enough armor. What I haven't seen is you." She held his gaze for a long moment, and for once she had no quick retort. The ship's engines roared back to life with a low, throbbing hum that reverberated through the hull. Jace tightened the last bolt on a console panel, his gloves smudged with grease and dried plasma residue. He leaned back and exhaled like a man who just survived building a nuclear bomb with duct tape. Lysera stood beside him, her armor fully repaired, every plate gleaming under the dim lights as though daring the universe to challenge her again. "Not bad for a guy who couldn't tell the difference between a coolant valve and a coffee machine," she said, inspecting his work. "Hey," Jace replied, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand, "you didn't complain when I saved us from a ship-wide power failure." "Pretty sure I just upgraded my resume from useless human soldier to certified alien mechanic." "You still speak too much," she said, but her tone was softer than usual, almost teasing. "Yeah," he grinned, "but admit it, you'd miss the noise." She tilted her head slightly, her long ears twitching. "Perhaps I would." They walked together down the corridor toward the control deck, the air tinged with the smell of burned metal and faint ozone. The ship's AI spoke as they passed the main generator. "Congratulations. The probability of catastrophic failure has dropped to a manageable 21%. I suppose I am impressed." "Wow," Jace said. "That's the AI equivalent of a warm hug. Thanks, buddy." "I am not your buddy." "See," Jace muttered to Lysera, "it likes me." Lysera laughed quietly, a sound that no longer surprised him but still made his chest tighten in the best way. She wasn't just the blood daughter of the seventh house anymore, not in his eyes. She was someone who laughed at his terrible jokes and let him see the cracks in the armor she wore, both literally and figuratively. When they reached the deck, the stars stretched out before them, a brilliant scatter of light across the void. Jace rested a hand against the console, staring out at the expanse. "You know," he said, "I thought coming out here, fighting this war, would just be another notch in my record. But somewhere between nearly being fried by a plasma coil and arguing with your I think I learned something." Lysera raised an eyebrow. "And what would that be?" "That I'm not just here to survive," he said quietly. "I'm here to actually see people, even when they're terrifying alien warriors who could crush me with one hand." She looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "You do see people," she said. "You see me." "Yeah," he said with a small grin. "Armor or no armor." She was silent for a long moment, then unclasped the final piece of her chest plate, setting it aside. Underneath was just her, still formidable, but less like a symbol of war and more like someone who might sit under a night sky and wonder what it all meant. "I have spent my life being what others expect," she said softly. "A shield, a weapon, but you," her voice faltered just for a second, "you look at me like I'm more than that." "You are," he said simply. The AI cut in with an unnecessary, sentimental conversation detected. Yeah, Jace said, waving a hand. "Don't ruin the moment." Lysera smirked, shaking her head. "You are insufferable." "Yet here we are," he said, leaning against the console. "You, me, a half-fixed warship, and a universe that probably wants us dead. Kind of feels like the start of something. Or the end, she said. Nah, he replied with a grin. I'm more of a glass-half-full guy. Except when the glass explodes, then I just get new glass. She laughed again, the sound warmer now, and stepped closer. Perhaps I will see where this something leads. You'd better, he said. I didn't risk degree burns fixing your ship for nothing. The ship's engines rumbled, fully restored now, and Lysera glanced toward the starlit horizon. We will need to face another battle soon. Yeah, Jace said, but we'll face it together. And hey, if it gets ugly, I'll just distract them with my dazzling personality. That may be your most effective weapon, she said dryly. Exactly, he said. Don't tell the others. They might start charging me